Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and today we are doing my top 10 favorite reads of 2021. Let's go! My review system is pretty simple. How much did I enjoy it? Out of a 5-star rating. That's it. Just out of pure enjoyment. I don't pretend to be a professor of English or literature or anything. So really simple here, really simple. I put them in order. They're all, like I said, they're all my favorites, but I did put them in order. I tried to put them in some type of order. So we're gonna go from, I don't wanna say my least favorite, but we'll go from number 10. Book number 10 is Finlay, Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. This is a mystery book. It's about Finlay. She is a struggling author, single mother. She's trying to write her next book so that she can, make some money to support her family. And she's sitting in a Panera Bread with her editor, and she's going over her next plot to her next book. And a woman that's sitting next to her, or sitting at a table next to them, overhears Finlay talking about this, and somehow thinks that Finlay is a hit woman. So she drops her phone number into Finlay's purse and eventually offers her a lot of money to take care of her husband. And craziness ensues from there. This book is over the top, so some people, may not enjoy it. Things that Finlay does in this book would either get her killed or put in jail in real life. But, fun times. It's fun times. I enjoyed it. The second book just came out. I haven't read it yet, but I look forward to continuing on. This is going to be a series, and it's great. Loved it. Book number 9 is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This book is a YA fantasy book. It's been called a King Arthur retelling. It's fantastic. A diverse cast of characters. It's adventurous. I've got a couple tabs in here. This is also a series. So this book is about Bree. I believe she's about 16 years old. She is dealing with the death of her mother, and she feels like there's some suspicious circumstances around her death. And she goes to this school where she is introduced to magic and demons and some guy that thinks he's Merlin, a wizard. The second book is one of my most anticipated books for 2022. I cannot wait to continue on. The end of this book was such a cliffhanger. The writer does such an amazing job of the visualization of the world in this and the building of the magic. It's I guess it would be considered urban fantasy. It's amazing. It's fantastic. I can't wait to read the second book. Highly recommend this one. Book number 8, I can't find. I don't know if I lent it out. It's somewhere, but I'll post a picture up on the screen. It is J.R.R. by Jennifer Hillier. It is like a suspense thriller. It is nonstop. I loved every second of it. It revolves around 3 friends from high school, one of which died many years ago. Another one, Gio, who is one of the main characters, she is, in the beginning of the book, you see her getting escorted to jail by the police for possible involvement in this murder. There's also a serial killer element to it, and the detective, which is the third friend in this group, I also get his point of view as well, because he's trying to figure out what happened to his friend. Was Gio really involved in it? And there's so many twists and turns. You're guessing, trying to figure out who did this, what is happening. Was Gio really a part of this murder? Did she help cover it up all these years? I don't remember it being too gory. I think there's a couple scenes where it kind of describes the murder, so kind of a little, but it wasn't too much, or I'm not remembering that being that gory. So Jar of Hearts, Jennifer Hillier. I loved it. Book number 7 is The Last House on Needless Street, and I don't know if this is Catriona or Catriona Ward, so I apologize again if I'm butchering that up. But this book, I can't even say that much about it because it's so bizarre. And there is a blurb on the front of it by Stephen King. A true nerve shredder that keeps its mind-blowing secrets to the very end. And that is 100% true. There is a cat in this book. It's a mind trip. It is a mind trip. I think I sat and read this in one day. I don't want to say too much about it. The best thing to do is to go into this blind. It is a thriller. So hard to describe this book. You just have to read it. You just have to experience it without knowing anything except for what is on the inside cover, and that it involves a cat. And the end is so bizarre, and it stuck with me for a very long time. And I'm actually, really, all of the books on this list I will reread at some point because they're that good. So I'm just gonna read the blurb to give you a little taste of what it's about. It says, in a boarded up house on a dead-end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods lives a family of 3. A teenage girl who isn't allowed outside, not after last time, a man who drinks alone in front of his TV, trying to ignore the gaps in his memory, and a house cat who loves napping and reading the Bible. An unspeakable secret binds them together, but when a new neighbor moves in next door, what is buried among the birch trees may come back to haunt them all. The Last House on Needless Street is an immersive and shocking journey that will keep you guessing until the last page. That is 100% accurate. Highly recommend this book. Book number 6 is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez, and this book is a romance book. It was fantastic. I loved her second book. I believe this is like a 3-book series. The second book, called The Happy Ever Playlist, I absolutely adored it. I haven't read the first book, which is The Friend Zone. I do hear that has mixed reviews, but I haven't read it, so I can't speak to that. But I will say her second book, The Happy Ever Playlist, and this book were fantastic. My favorite romance books always tend to be the ones that really stick with you. That the conflict isn't just, oh, we miscommunicated, we're mad at each other, and then we make up. No, there's usually something deeper that puts me in a place where I'm like, if that happened to me, how would I handle that? It makes you think, and this is one of those. The main character, Vanessa, is this big YouTube traveling social media star. She's very intentional about living her life to the fullest because her mother and her sister passed away of a disease which is potentially hereditary, so she just is very determined to live her life to the fullest. And then her sister, who has an addiction issue, drops her daughter off, and Vanessa is stuck with her niece, and she's stuck with her niece in her apartment trying to figure out what to do. Vanessa does have a dysfunctional family. There are, I guess, trigger warnings if you want to check those out, just for dysfunction and addiction and some grief as well. So she's taking care of her niece, and her niece is screaming at the top of her lungs, and her neighbor down the hallway, what's his name? Adrian. Her neighbor down the hallway hears this screaming, and he comes and knocks on the door. They develop a friendship. They develop a relationship. It goes from there. It is funny. It's hilarious. There's parts that are absolutely funny, but like I said, there are parts that really will, make you think. Those are always my favorite romance books. So again, highly recommend. This is definitely an auto-buy author for me. I've loved her last 2 books so much, so I'm definitely going to be reading more from her. And I'll try to read The Friend Zone. You can't let mixed reviews or bad reviews stop you from reading a book. You got to check it out on your own, see what it is. Give your own thoughts. So, loved it. Book number 5 is Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a sci-fi book set in space. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that is my thing. I love sci-fi books that are set in space. My dog has decided to drink her water, so I'm sorry if you hear that noise right now. This is what happens when you move your filming into a joined space in the house. Wow. This book is about Rylan, who wakes up in space and doesn't remember how he got there or who he is or what's going on. His memory slowly starts to come back and the story unfolds, and it's phenomenal. This book was absolutely phenomenal. I loved every single second of it. I highly, highly recommend the audiobook, especially if you've never read sci-fi or you just have been putting it off because you feel like you're not really gonna understand it. There is some science jargon in it. It's not It's not too bad. It's interesting. I find it interesting. But if that kind of, you know, freaks you out a little bit, I would definitely recommend the audiobook for this. Rylan, the main character, has such a funny sense of humor, and the narrator that does the audiobook, he pulls it off brilliantly. So I highly recommend this book. I don't want to say too much more about it, but there is moments in this that are so beautiful. And the ending, oh my gosh, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Loved this book so much. Book number 4 is A Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This was my book of the month pick in July, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. I can't stop thinking about this book, and I am really, really hoping that they put this into a motion picture and movie. Not low budget, like literally put some money behind this book, behind the adaptation of this book, because it was amazing. So it's about these two men, a black man and a white man, who have lost their 2 sons that were married. And so there's definitely some themes there about homophobia and race. And they're grieving and they're angry. The main characters, Ike and Buddy, meeting up. They're both ex-cons. They end up getting together and basically avenging their sons. And it's just such it's such an amazing story to see the things that they go through, not only addressing race issues between each other, but then also just grieving their sons and the lost time that they missed because of their own, you know, personal views on their relationship. And it's a beautiful story. But having said that, it is graphic. There is some violence in this. The whole time I'm reading this book, and I read this book in like one day. The whole time I'm reading this book, I'm picturing Denzel Washington, Matthew McConaughey, and the entire cast of Sons of Anarchy. That's just, the whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, can we make this happen? Because I need them to play these parts in this book, because if it's adapted, because that's just who I pictured in these as these characters. But this book stayed with me. I bawled my eyes out. The ending was fantastic, and I am really looking forward to seeing what else this author writes, because it was just a wonderful read. So I highly recommend this book. I'm going to say that for all of them. They're my top 10. I highly recommend all of them. I'm sorry. I'm repeating the same thing, but it's true. They're great. They're great books. Book number 3 on this list. This is actually, I just want to say the whole trilogy. Let's just say the whole First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie was 5 stars. Fantastic. This is grimdark fantasy. I think I have mentioned this in my other videos. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's pretty much everywhere, but grimdark fantasy, characters that will leave you just wanting to live in this world, because even though it's grimdark and they're all morally gray, and you're like, why am I rooting for this person? But brilliant, 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 brilliant. I loved it. I read all 3 of them last year. This is another book that has a wonderful narrator to the audiobooks. And again, if you are kind of like, don't really read fantasy, or putting, you know, reading fantasy off, I highly recommend. God, how many times can I say I highly recommend? I definitely, well, I don't know what other words to use for recommend. I highly suggest, let's use that word. I suggest trying to read it along with the audiobook, and then finding an audiobook that has like a really good, my dog, I swear to God, helps. I do it all the time, especially in books that have a lot of characters and world, and there's maps and different places. You know, I love listening to the audiobook along with reading it. It's like double saturation of the information in my brain, and if it's a great narrator, it just makes the story come alive even more. Yeah, so this is a multiple point of view book as well. Wonderful characters. I mean, every single person that reviews this series, that's what you talk about, the characters. I love them. I love all of them so much. Even if I hate them sometimes, they're still wonderful characters. So, highly recommend. And my number 2 book of 2021 was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. It was so amazing. The Brandon Sanderson books that I've read so far is Elantris, Warbreaker, Mistborn, Skyward, and Starsight. They're all amazing. I love him. Love his writing. Cannot wait to start the epic Stormlight Archives. Each book's like 1,000 pages. I'm actually like saving it because I'm trying to like savor it because I know it's gonna be an amazing time. But out of the books I've read so far, Elantris has been my favorite. It has been my favorite. The world in this book, this is what the heck? The world building in this book, it's phenomenal. It's Sanderson. It's phenomenal. It's hard to explain it without talking about it forever, but Elantris itself is a city that was initially pristine. It was beautiful, white streets, everything's clean, and inhabited by these like godlike people. And they become this way because of an event that happens, and it can happen to anyone, poor, rich, it doesn't matter who it is, but it happens in the middle of the night, and it's called the Shroud. Yeah, the Shroud. And you wake up and you're like this, like God, and you go and you live in Elantris and you have like power and you heal very quickly and you're almost like immortal. And then something happened to where the transformation was not beautiful. These people woke up and they're disfigured and they don't heal quickly. So if you stub your toe, you know that pain you feel when you stub your toe and you're like dropping some 4-letter words? Then in this world, when you stub your toe, if you've become an Elantrian, your toe is jacked up forever. It hurts all like forever, constantly. So they are thrown into Elantris. Now this is a city that's just run down. It has like, Sanderson describes it with like this like soot, like this nastiness that's on the walls and all over the streets. It's like it covers everything in the city. And you're thrown in there and you're only given like a little bit of food. And so a little bit of food, disfigured, and now like if you have any type of injury, you don't heal from it. You feel it forever. And then when you're thrown in there with your food, the people that are left in this city are like trying to take you out because they're starving. So a prince ends up going through this transformation and he's thrown into the city and he wants to figure out, why did this happen? He wants to live. He wants to prevent, you know, from himself going crazy. And so you follow his storyline in the city Elantris, and then in the cities and the realm outside of it is his princess, who he was supposed to get married to. You're following her. She ends up still coming to live with their family because it's like a treaty where you have to, even though they didn't end up getting married because he disappeared, and she doesn't know that he disappeared. She wasn't told this. I think she was just told that he died. So the other points of view in this book is from a priest who is something else. So there's definitely some underlying, you know, religious themes in this, and which is, you know, a made up religion in this book. And what Sanderson does in this story, I couldn't put it down. I could not put it down. I loved every single second of it, and the way that he describes Elantris before the transformation and then afterwards, I could see it so clearly in my mind. I almost felt like I was standing on top of the wall that surrounds it, looking down and seeing everything that was happening as I'm reading this book. And that is what makes certain authors stand out from others, when you just have this visualization of the story in your head so crystal clear. I loved this book, and I think it's like one of his first ones, either if not his first book, and it kind of has mixed reviews. Some people love it, some people don't, and it's my favorite by him so far. So if you haven't read any Sanderson and you've heard about him all the time and, you know, nonstop, try this one. It was great, and again, I read it along with the audiobook. One of my favorites. I can't wait to reread it. I can't wait to re-experience it. That's how wonderful it was. So I highly recommend this one too. So my #1 book of 2021 is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, what do I even need to say about The Hobbit, you know? But I remember trying to read this book about 20 years ago, and I just couldn't get into it. I just couldn't. I couldn't get into any of the books. Couldn't get into Lord of the Rings or anything. And my goal last year was to read more classics. And I've always loved the movies. Loved them all. The Hobbit, all of them. The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, loved them all. So I was like, I'm going to try to read The Hobbit again. Again, use my little trick of having, you know, to read it along with a audiobook version of it. And let me tell you, the audiobook version that I read along with this book is narrated by Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum in all of the movies. And it was an experience. That's my dog. It was an experience like none other, and I will never forget it. I cannot wait to reread this book and listen to that audiobook again. It is absolutely brilliant. He does every single character. He sings along with the songs that are in this book, and I couldn't, every time I put this book down, I could not wait to get back into the world. Like, I just wanted to finish my daily life and get back into this world with these characters and his narration, because it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And I have this like newfound love for this book because of him. And I'm really, really excited to continue on and read Lord of the Rings this year. And I know it's probably, I doubt that it's narrated by him, but because of Andy Serkis' his reading of this story, I've learned to love J.R.R. Tolkien's writing. It just brought it to life so much. So that's been kind of a theme with the books, now that I'm thinking about it, is if there's a book or a genre that you're afraid to jump into, or you feel like it's too over your head, or you're just not going to really get it, or it's not your thing, try the audiobook. Try the audiobook. Make sure it's narrated by someone who's good, but try it, because it can change your perspective so much. I remember trying to read The Hobbit so many times throughout my life, and I was like, what is this? Like, I can't get into this. And I'm just super thankful, super thankful for the narration that Andy Serkis did. It was absolutely beautiful. Immediately after I read it, I of course went and had to watch all the movies again, and I'm like, no, why did you change that? No, you know. Whereas before I thought it was perfect. I thought they were great movies, and having actually read the book, just like any other time, the book is always better, of course. Those are my top 10 books of 2021. I know they are all over the place. I read, like you can see, so many different genres. It keeps me from getting bored, you know, so you can jump around and read different genres. And I can't wait to see what my list looks like this time next year. So were any of these similar to your top 10 of 2021? Let me know. Hit that like and subscribe button as always. I appreciate you spending time with me as always, and I cannot wait to see you again next time. See ya.